Think about it. Think about it. There we go. It's going. Okay. So, as of last time that we met back when it was not Rio, even though Rio was amazing and we loved having her, back before then, we discussed the fact that all of you guys were like, how do I make war story tinier? Um, because we were talking about word counts, specifically with the scary story contest and whatnot coming up, with the fact that it's 1,500 word limit. That's short. That's really heckin' short. Um, as a result, we are going to talk about how to cut out words and how to fit into word counts better. Um, Word counts are something you will always have to struggle with, unfortunately, if you are a writer, because even if it is just a longer word count, you also have word counts even if you're writing a novel. Believe it or not. The only time that does not matter is if you're an independent, and that's because you can say, ha, I do what I want, and move on. But if you're traditionally publishing through a company, they have a certain expectation for the minimum word count and the maximum word count that it should be. As a result, you are going to have to cut or add. And so we're going to talk about that today. Um, Mostly we're going to talk about cutting words because most people tend to do too many and then don't know how to minus. So we're going to address that. Obviously, we can talk about how to add things later, but that tends to be less of a writer's problem. It tends to be the other way around. So we're going to talk about short stories first because that is the most common form of contest. The most common form of contest is short story contests. Why? Because they're easier to grade. Um, with that being said, 1,500 words is considered the bare minimum for a short story. It's why I upped it to 1,500 words when they were like, how about we make it 1,200 words? And I was like, that is technically flash fiction. That is not short stories. Yes, there is actually a definition based on word count for all sorts of different things. It's wild. Um, with that being said, 1,000 words is not much, but it's what we have to do because currently we still have the lovely Mr. Beeson. He was my teacher as a creative writing student in high school, and he was awesome. But he does require his students who are in the fall semester to enter into the scary story contest. As a result of that, we have so many entries that we just cannot possibly keep up unless we keep the word count. Um, so we had to make it 1,500 or we were all gonna die. Oh. We tried to have it higher and we just were like, we barely finished grading like 24 hours before we were supposed to submit like the actual awards and stuff, and that was just too stressful. First thing that you want to cut is redundancies. Now, redundancies are of any kind. You might not even realize you are being redundant. It can happen all the time. It's one of the most common things that I see as my professional editing job is cutting out redundant sentences where they'll be like, his black hair flowed in the wind, and then or not even a paragraph later, they'll be like, his black hair shimmered in the sunlight. It's like, you already said his hair was black. Pick one, delete the other. Easy way to get rid of words right there is descriptions that you've already done one of within the last little while. For short stories, you only need one description at the beginning, and then you never need to do it again. For a novel, if you want to revisit it, or like if their hairstyles changed or something dramatic like that, like let's say they got magic powers and their eyes went from green to gold or something like that, that's an important thing to mention. But otherwise, don't mention it again. Be like, hey, here's what they look like, move right along. Next thing, info dumping actually hurts your word count and it hurts the story. Info dumping is when you say, they have black hair, they have blue eyes, they are 5'11", you're just telling us facts about the character, like a textbook would. Um, Info dumping hurts your story because it doesn't read as well. It's not very fun for the reader, but it also hurts your story with word count because of the fact that you are not doing double duty. Double duty is when you have actions helping just give your descriptions. So like I was saying, the hair shimmers in the sunlight, the hair flows in the wind. That way you're establishing one of two things, the environment and the character description. So it cuts down on word count because you're not having to describe the environment and describe the character. That will make it so that you are more succinct in your writing. The last thing with redundancies is descriptions themselves. If you are saying their hair is flowing in the wind, you don't need to mention 5,000 descriptions about the hair. Just saying it flows in the wind will let us know it's longer. Short hair doesn't do that. If you want us to know the exact length, then you're welcome to say like something that makes it a little more distinctive that it is longer. For example, long hair probably would whip in the wind rather than flow in the wind because it has so much length to it. Hello, come sit down. So you can indicate certain things like that in just the descriptive choices that you use. You do not have to say their hair is this short, their eyes are this color, etc., in such a way that is gonna make it cumbersome. The next thing is filler words. If you'd like, at the end, I can give you a list of filler words and why they are called filler words. Filler words are those words that don't really need to be there. They are in the sentence, but if you deleted it, the sentence would still function just fine, if not better. I have a whole, like I said, I have a whole list. I'll go over that at the end, but it's a long freaking list. So let's move on to other things. Next thing, adverbs. I have a complicated opinion on adverbs. Weird way to start, but I have a complicated opinion on adverbs. Why? Stephen King said adverbs are the slow paved road to hell or something like that. He's dramatic. He has issues. He also is wrong. Hot, salty take. But he's wrong. With adverbs, nothing wrong with adverbs. The problem with adverbs is that sometimes people use them too much. That is true. If you do everything slowly, cutely, smallly, etc., you end up just muddying the waters. However, sometimes an adverb is necessary. It is a part of a sentence for a reason. But I would say if you type in ly to your like find and search thing, have you ever done that in a document where you're like find search and then you hit the thing and then it tells you how many of them you have? Yeah. If you have more than, I would say, a ratio of, if it's more than 10% of your word count is adverbs, you have a problem. You probably need to cut out some adverbs, at least half. Yes, question.
My brain is not brainy. What does the adverb mean again?
Ending in ly. It's a verb ending in ly. So like I said, slowly, petulantly, cutely. You're momly. That's not a verb. I mean,
well, it is now according to Sadie. She knows everything. So yeah,
Sadie's always right. All right. Good to know. I was unaware of this. Sadie, come up here. No, I'm kidding. All right. So, when it comes to adverbs, there's nothing wrong with those words. It's just like I said, if you add 5,000 of them, then it becomes a problem. So it's important to be able to keep track of those kinds of things and make sure you're not going too crazy when it comes to that. The next thing is called purple prose. Now, what's the difference between prose and purple prose? Purple prose is when it becomes so descriptive that it's actually hurting your pacing. So typically the best way to discover this is actually just write your natural sentence and then go back and highlight how many of the words are adjectives or adverbs, because those are describing things. Nothing wrong with being descriptive. You want to be immersive, but there is such a thing as too far. If you've written a sentence that is 10 words long and 7 of those are descriptor words, you have a problem. Your sentences should maybe have 50% of the sentence being descriptive. Maybe. Sometimes you can even get away with less. Most of it should be action. Most of it should be moving forward. Most of it should not be description. If most of it's description, you moved into purple prose category. Once again, indie publishing, that's fine. That's your style. Move on. Traditional, they will whoop your butt. They don't like purple prose. They will kick you butt. They might even reject you because of purple prose, unfortunately. A lot of people get rejected due to purple prose. It's a common problem. With that being said, it's okay to be a little lavender. Nothing wrong with being a little bit of lavender in your prose. If you are a little heavy on the description, that's fine. But if you're too heavy-handed, you're gonna kill your manuscript. Next thing, action tags versus dialogue tags. 99% of the time, you do not need a dialogue tag. That's he said, she whispered, he whispered. You maybe need one to start if you're like saying they're whispering, and then you don't need to do it ever again. If they're whispering the rest of the time, that's fine. However, if they change and they're like, he what? Halfway through the whispering, then you need to add in a new thing. But most of the time, I would say if you're going to add a tag slash it's necessary to identify who is speaking, use what's called an action tag. Action tags are, for instance, um, I can't believe you did this. He sipped the tea bitterly. And it's like that's an action tag. If you have to identify who is speaking, that's how you do it. Second, I will answer your question in a second. By the way, I want to acknowledge I did see you. No, you're fine. I just was like, I have not acknowledged her. I'm sorry. The last thing that I have to say about this before I answer your question regarding this is that with action tags, you do have to be careful not accidentally attributing something to someone else. There are a lot of times where people will say, like, oh, and then Selena chortled, but Selena's not the one who was speaking. You have to just cut that off, new paragraph. Otherwise, it's confusing. Even if that's not your intent, doesn't matter. It's confusing. Better to avoid it than to maybe get an assumption accidentally. Yes, question, Rhea, or comment.
So with uh,
Action tags and
whisper,
dialogue tags.
with whisper and dialogue,
Mm-hmm.
it's a little bit off topic, but it's about the whisper dialogue.
That's fine.
Do you need to italicize that?
No, not at all. Italicizations is only for thoughts or letters.
Okay,
That is the only thing you need. You just say he whispered, you're done. You know they're whispering for the rest of the time, and it is presumed they're always whispering until you change that. You as the author dictate the pace. If it changes, great. Also, you don't always need dialogue tags or any tags, not even action tags. I actually did that as a challenge to myself. I totally expected to lose, by the way. Speaking of which, we're going to discuss that at some point because all but one of you on my little survey that I asked last week about like what you guys want to see was like, yes, I would love to see your old crappy writing, and I'm like, okay. So eventually we're gonna get there. I need to find things. And well, no, it wasn't just you because I was like that. Out of 7 people who responded to that, 6 of you wanted to see my old crappy writing. So you were like, yeah, I find that inspiring and encouraging because it's okay to fail. And I'm like, okay, now I have to go find it and realize it's okay to fail myself.
I
So-
lost my old writing away.
exactly. I'm like, I have to go find it now. I have to actively go spelunking in my old files and be like, oh, this lovely piece of trash. So- yes, I'm dumpster diving through my own files. Not that everything I ever wrote was bad, but anyway, we all have our bad stuff. With that being said, though, eventually we will get there. Please know if it's taking a while for me to get there, it's not because I'm avoiding it, it's because I'm actively looking for both examples of the best things I've ever written and the worst things I've ever written to show you that there's a dynamic. With that being said, though, you can remove dialogue and action tags entirely. I wrote a scary story and I actually ended up getting first place. Don't ask me how, I don't know. I still am baffled. Um, that had no dialogue tags and no action tags. It was 100% purely 2 people speaking. And through that 2 people speaking, though, I was able to both portray scenes and I was able to portray who was speaking because of the fact that the dialogue was so distinctly different between the 2 people. One of them would use very eloquent, very like scientific speak, and the other one was just kind of like, bro, what's up? And so it was very distinct who was talking when and what was going on. And even through the dialogue, you could tell even sometimes things like whispering, like they'd be like, what did you say? And then as a result, you'd be able to tell, like, oh, so they're either whispering or they're far away. And then I'd give following clues in the rest of the dialogue. You don't have to use action and dialogue tags, they are not necessary. They are nice, but they are not necessary. It's actually better to remove most of them. If you're trying to cut words, the best way to cut words is to go to your dialogue section and cut out as many as you can without destroying it. All right, next thing. Putting in more conjunctions. Now, this one's just a classic one. It's kind of similar to the essay thing where they're like, make it 200 words longer. And you're like, what do? I make all my don'ts do nots. Well, do the reverse if you're trying to cut out words. Make all your do nots don'ts and so on and so forth. Conjunctions are a beautiful thing. Use them liberally. Just completely slather your thing in conjunctions if you're having a hard time with word count. Gets double the amount of meaning into one word. Um, Next thing is see if there's a simpler way to describe things. And then I'm going to move on to my filler words and I'm going to explain how filler words work and why they don't have to be there. So, for example, the wind whistled through the trees, causing a shiver to run down Trisha's back. Versus wind whistled through the trees, a shiver ran down Trisha's back. Both are grammatically correct. One has 3 less words, which when you're trying to cut words is a lot. So you can find a way to cut things down and still have the same point given across, sometimes even better and more punchy. Now, if you don't want to do that, that's fine. Like, I respect that. That's why independent publishing exists, and different things like that. But at the same time, if you're trying to go for succinct, if you're trying to go for the word count and you're not quite making it, these are some basic tips. All right. Now let's talk about filler words. Go back to that topic just because it's an important one. Filler words, like I said, are words that you can get rid of just as easily and no one will notice they're not there. In fact, if anything, they might be like, huh, that sounds a lot better now that it's not there. With that being said, I'm going to explain examples in which you don't need them. When it comes to dialogue, most of these filler words you can keep because of the fact that dialogue sounds more natural when you have filler words. Because we are people, we have filler words. Because we forget things and have struggles remembering words, and we're or you have different things like you have the know-it-all going actually all the time. Exactly. So like you know those are in there naturally and organically in dialogue. It's just part of life. So if it's dialogue, keep it in. That's fine. But otherwise, I would say Control F to find these words and then try to delete as many as you can because they just don't need to be there most of the time. Which actually is one of these. You don't need to have actually in there 99% of the time. It can swim without it. Next thing, basically or seriously. Again, dialogue, great. Outside of dialogue, not necessarily. Unless you're saying something like he was seriously injured, not necessary. 99% of the time you can get rid of it because you're just filling in the word temporarily while you're struggling to write, and then later you can, boop, gone. Next thing is like. Sanderson actually introduced me to this one when I was listening to his podcast back when it was his podcast. He's since left his own podcast, but anyway, I'm not salty. But yes, one of the things that he said was, is it like a sunset? In which case that's a simile, beautiful, or is it just a sunset? Oftentimes people will add like in there even when they don't need it. You can say it is like something, sure, but you don't always need to say it is like something. Simile is a beautiful tool, but often people use it too much. They just treat like everything like a simile and then it's, well, bad. Next things are I guess or I suppose. Again, dialogue, fine. Outside of dialogue, probably not necessary. Unless your narrator is using this actively as they're describing things. In which case, I would say just get rid of about half of them. Again, not as necessary. Next thing is very. You probably don't need as many varies as you have in there. Or you can just use a more intense word. Instead of saying he was very grumpy, you can just say irate. Like, just make it a different word. Next is really, same issue. He's really grumpy. Irate. Fix the problem. Um, Cuts out words in half, quite literally. Next thing is like I said. That is only necessary in dialogue if they're being obnoxious. If they are not an obnoxious person, you really don't need it. Why? Because someone shouldn't be saying that unless there is a reason for it. If they're just saying, like I said, blah, 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 that's actually a cue for maiden butler dialogue. Maiden butler dialogue is a very common trope back when it was during like black and white movie times where they'd be like, as you know, or like I said, the master will be here at 6 p.m. And it's like, if I already know that, why are you saying that? Unless you're just being a jerk. So if they're being obnoxious, great, good character development. If they're not being obnoxious, you don't need that. It's probably better without it. And the maiden butler dialogue may not even be necessary. You can just show her being anxious because the other guy isn't hurrying up and it's almost 6 o'clock, and that'll be plenty. You don't need to say that. With that being said, other things, again, a lot of these are adverbs, hence why adverbs can be a problem. Highly, totally, simply, again, a lot of these can be replaced with other more emphatic words. Most, slightly, absolutely. Again, just pick a different word. Most of the time, if you're adding in an adverb, you can probably just pick a different word. Again, this is only about 50% of the time being true, though. Adverbs are an important part of the sentence in the language, and Stephen King needs to chill out. With that being said, moving forward, gotta keep scrolling. Okay, next one is up or down. Now, this sounds dumb. Be a filler word is because of this. Oftentimes, you'll say the person was super, super tall, and then you'll say, like, looked up at them, and it's like, well, if you already know they're tall, then you can just say, I looked at them. It's obvious which direction they're looking because you already know they're tall. Or alternatively, this stairs spiraled into the basement. You don't need to say down into the basement. We know basements are down, unless your story's really whack. So, again, it's one of those things where just look at the context. If the context indicates it's up or it's down, you don't need the word up or down. Not a necessary word. Other things, quite, perhaps, and so. Again, all filler. Most of the time you don't need it unless it's dialogue. Next thing, however. However is one of those words that you probably don't need. If you're saying however, you probably can write it differently. You don't necessarily have to, but you probably can. Next thing is well. Again, well, great for dialogue, not so great for prose. And last but most certainly not least, now, then, that, and still. Then and that are ones that we tend to shove in there just because they sound right, and then when you pull it back, oh, I didn't really need that in there. I didn't really need then in there. Same thing with still or now. If it is obviously in the present, you don't need now. If it is obviously still happening, you don't need still. And then and that, like I said, it's just a common one. It's one of the most massive pitfalls that people make is then and that because it feels so natural in a sentence, right? But that doesn't always mean you need it. All right. Any other questions we have about cutting out words or word count? Nope. Awesome. Cool. All right, in that case, then I'm going to turn off the video, but not before I mention, aside from the scary story contest, which is due the first week of October, not sure exactly when, but sometime the week of October, because that's always when we have it due, is sometime along that week. We also have the first chapter contest coming up. So please, any first chapter that you have, the only thing we don't take is fan fiction, but otherwise, just go nuts, go bananas. Murder mystery, romance, we'll take it. As long as it is under 3,000 words. And again, you can still submit stuff that's over 3,000 words. We will still give you feedback. You just contest potential winning stuff. As far as the 3,000 words goes, the easiest way that you can cut down here, because it's a first chapter, is to just pick a spot that you could have did the chapter but chose not to. In which case, we won't be able to tell. What does it matter if it's not the full chapter? If we can't tell and it feels like it's fine. No need to stress about. But that's only half the chapter. Well, if I can't tell, then I won't judge you on that. If I can obviously tell, it's like, but, and then just trails off and I don't have the rest of the chapter, I'm going to be a little sad. But with that being said, I'm going to turn off the video now and we can discuss anything else that you would like regarding writing or questions that you have. In the meantime, I'm also going to look over the rest of your guys' responses and try to see what else you guys wanted, because I would love to be able to not only do more lessons that you guys have requested, but I would also love to be able to know more about what kinds of things you guys would appreciate going into next year. I won't be able to implement everything this year. I'm going to try, but, you know, most of them will probably have to wait till next year because a lot of them were bigger ideas, more broad scale things.
Yeah, I'm not gonna be here next year.
That's okay. I'm gonna do as many of the things as I can this year.
It's not my fault that I'm aging.
But yes, I'm going to turn off the video now. If you have any questions or anything like that, feel free to ask me. I'm more than happy to help. Please know that even if I'm typing or on my computer, I have ADHD. I'm more than happy to listen to you talk as well. You aren't interrupting me. If anything, you're probably helping me because my own brain is going, I'm distracted. So at least I can be doing something productive while I'm getting distracted. All right, I'm going to turn off the video now and we can discuss.